This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Karina Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different Q's.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Karina Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 with Maine Veterans Homes CEO Brad Klawitter. There are several legislators that actually listen to this podcast. Let's hear your floor speech as to why this needs to pass. LD 182.
My floor speech would be America and the state of Maine makes contracts with veterans. I'm a disabled veteran myself. We understand that when we sign that dotted line, that we could give life, limb, in service to the country, and we accept that. But part of us accepting that is that we're going to be taken care of when we come back, because there's significant issues. The comorbidities that veterans suffer compared to the general population and some of the diseases that they face at a higher incident, veterans expect that they're going to be taken care of. And when we're looking at possible changes to what we're able to offer at Maine Veterans Homes, we're not honoring that contract. Or as the Maine legislature put it in 1977, the moral obligation that we have to our veterans. Now, I understand it's difficult in that there's only limited money. We were able to pass the committee, 9 votes to 0. We passed on a roll call vote in the House, 143 to 0, and consent calendar from the Senate. So we didn't receive one no vote through the entire process. But what I don't think most people realize is that it then has to go through an appropriations process. So just because you're able to get it to pass committee and House and Senate doesn't mean that it's going to get funded. And that's where we haven't been able to get this to the finish line in the past, is at that appropriations table. Usually we get tabled and it's not up for consideration. Now, that doesn't mean that the appropriations committee are bad people. I don't want to cast it by them not passing this or voting to include this, that they're anti-veteran, anti-American, anything like that. They've got a very hard task. They were given about $12 million once the budget was passed to fulfill over $2 billion worth of requests. And we're just one of them. Personally, it's a deep commitment to me. So I argue that our veterans are worth that commitment. But I also understand from their standpoint where it's very difficult to serve all needs.
I know there's quite a few veteran groups out there. Are you working with them also?
Absolutely. We like to partner with anyone that's in the veteran space that is legitimate. So we partner with the VFW, the DAV, the American Legion. All of your veteran service organizations are very active in our homes, whether it's coming in and hosting bingo or cooking pancakes or whatever it may be, and financially. We've received generous donations from these organizations that have allowed a lot of our activities that veterans enjoy to continue without interruption. Not only have we partnered with them in terms of helping our veterans with some of the donations and activities, but they've been an active supporter of ours through the legislative process. There wasn't a hearing that I spoke at where I didn't have members of the DAV and the VFW and the auxiliaries present in their uniforms with their covers on. Just their presence also has lent a great deal of help to us in order to get our message through that this is important, not just to the veterans that are currently utilizing our services, but for all the veterans to come. And if there's one more thing I could add to that floor speech question, it's the other thing I worry about if we're not able to adequately fund these services for veterans is that could have a chilling effect on people that are thinking about joining the service. Unfortunately, the world's unstable right now, and we don't want to do things that are going to have folks not want to join the services.
Let's talk about the quality of care at your facilities.
I'd love to. Maine Veterans Homes has always had a strong reputation for the quality of care that we provide, and that continues to this day. If you're familiar with the CMS star ratings, most of our facilities sit at a 5 or a 4 star. Every once in a while, we'll have a blip because of an incident. But if you look over the history of our facilities, we're generally rated the highest by CMS. I'm looking at our quality, our outcomes, and our staffing measures. There's also quality awards, gold, silver, and bronze, that the AHCA, American College of Healthcare Administrators, hands out to long-term care facilities. We are the only facility in Maine that has received a gold star, and all of our facilities have received either a gold, a silver, or a bronze star. But more than that, one of the things that I look at the most is what's our resident and family satisfaction? What's our customer service? And we rank in the top 15%. All 6 of our homes, judged independently, rank in the top 15% of nursing homes for resident satisfaction. When you look at the key question of would you recommend Maine Veterans Homes to a loved one or a friend, it's over 9 out of 10 that say yes, they would. The outcomes that we have, the quality, and again, I think a lot of that has to go to the therapeutic environment that we're able to provide because of all the folks that will come in and support us, because of the activities that we can support. All of those things that make us special. That's part of the reason that the outcomes are as good as they are, because happy staff, happy residents are not exclusive of each other. They're very inclusive of each other.
As we were talking offline, you mentioned about the investigation by OPEGA. Can you expand on that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. As a quasi-governmental organization, we do have some oversight. Mainly it comes from the Committee for Veteran and Legal Affairs. However, there was a complaint made by a former employee that we were not utilizing the resources that we had appropriately. So that was brought up to the Government Oversight Committee, and then they asked OPEGA, the Office of Professional Ethics and Government Accountability, to do an investigation. And most people probably aren't familiar with OPEGA, but you might be familiar with the child welfare investigations that are going on. That's the organization that also looked into our finances. So for 2.5 years, they had full access to our audited financials, our general ledger, all of our financial statements. We gave them over 50,000 documents to review, as well as our controller and other folks spent a couple of months every other week sitting down with folks from OPEGA to look at individual items that could be called questionable. At the end of the investigation, 2.5 years, all of these documents, what the real finding was, because we didn't get paid out appropriated dollars in the way that we were promised them, we had to do the best we could with what we had. And because of that, there was no fraud, there was no waste, there was no abuse. And I think that's important for folks to know, that we are not frivolously spending money. As a new CEO to the organization, at first I was terrified when I heard that we had this investigation going on. But at the same time, I was also happy, because if there were any issues that needed to be addressed, I was going to have a clean slate of what I need to look at. Now, that's not to say that there weren't things that we can improve. But out of $27 million in purchases, there was about $150,000 that could have been questionable. And of those, we resolved all but $15,000 before they were identified to us. So I know your business, folks. $15,000 out of $27 million, that's pretty good for an accounts payable.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
That's important.
So I know you're looking for $5 million out of the $11 billion or so budget that will be matched by the federal government. What's the best action that you can take to get there?
Since I've been here, there's been a lot of talk about the budget and how much Maine is spending. And I don't want to disparage any cause that's out there. Everyone has causes that are important to them. And I think most causes are worthy. What I would tell the folks is, if you don't see your representatives supporting what you believe in, give them a call. Call your legislator, call the state reps, call the state senators, call the governor's office, and let them know that this is important to you. If LD 182, Maine Veterans Home, is important to you and that you want that to be a priority when we're looking at where are we going to spend the state's budget.
And like you were saying, it actually saves us money if they're in your home versus going through Maine Care.
That's correct. $20 million a year is saved by going to our home versus Maine Care.
Let alone if you have any of your homes closing, they now may have to travel 2-3 hours, which is also an additional stressor and expense, at least on the family.
Right. It absolutely would be. And as we alluded to, I'm 10 months into this position. But the one thing that the board made very clear to me, my number one purpose here is to ensure that we keep 6 homes open in the 6 locations that we're at. That is my number one focus right now and my number one drive.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a discussion with Maine Veterans Homes CEO, Brad Klawitter. Where would people go if they want to make a donation?
You can go to mainvets.org/donate, and you can make a tax-deductible charitable donation there. We do plan on in the future, like I alluded to, we're going to expand our philanthropy program. And we're hoping to work with partners in the community to also help ensure that these homes are staples in the community for another 30 to 40 years.
And can you explain where these funds are needed?
Sure. The biggest need that we have is just in our operational funds. So as we've discussed, the pandemic really wreaked havoc on the long-term care industry. We had people leaving as far as employees. Again, as we talk about that gray tsunami, we always knew that we were going to have a large number of nurses retiring. What we didn't anticipate was that we were going to have a pandemic that was going to ignite that. So we saw 300,000 more people leave the workforce during the pandemic that were not projected to. We're also seeing burnout. 1 out of 3 nursing students, when they graduate and have their RN, will no longer work as an RN about 3 years into their career. So we're dealing with a staffing shortage of both licensed and unlicensed staff. That's driving up our expenses. In order for us to recruit staff, we have to stay in line with what the community is. And a lot of times we're a little bit higher. We have those types of expenses. Something that most people wouldn't realize is that seems insignificant is that we pay into the Maine PERS system. That means we spend $1.7 million over what we would if we were in the Social Security program. Not only that, if we wanted to leave Maine PERS, there's an unfunded liability portion. So we wouldn't be able to do that because we would have to pay out $21 million in order to leave. We have different footprints that are required. So if you look at our new Augusta home, that was built under the home model that the VA is requiring now if you get a grant through them. The operational cost of a home model is much higher than your traditional nursing home. And that's because it's truly that. It's a home. Each resident has their own home that's in a neighborhood of 10 to 15 other residents. And if you were to walk into the new Augusta home, you would have no idea. There's a main street with a bar and a bank and groceries. Each little home operates as its own independent, but that takes a lot of staffing. So we've seen those types of expenses go up. We're also dealing with different types of legislation that's trying to be passed that will require even more licensed staffing that we don't have in the state. Originally, there was a rule that came out that we would have to have a licensed nurse on every unit of our assisted living facilities. Again, assisted living is just that you're assisting. Their care is not as acutely ill as some of the others. That would add zero value to quality. It would cost us $6 million, and I don't know where I'm going to find the RNs. We already don't have enough RNs, and we're looking at different types of legislation that they're trying to force our hand. Luckily, there was enough noise about that it got pulled back, but that's kind of the headwinds that we're facing right now. When you look at expenses, in 2019, we had about $75 million in expenses. When we closed the books in 2024, $121 million in expenses. And we didn't see an increase in reimbursements to help cover that. So that's the perfect storm. Not only us, but a lot of long-term care and hospitals. We've seen hospitals inland down the road had to close not too long ago. And we continue to hear about all of these organizations, critical access hospitals that are on the brink of closing. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to the cost of care has gotten to be so much that we can't pay for it anymore.
Especially in Bangor, where you have 2 hospitals that you're trying to compete with RNs or doctors. That's got to be tough.
It seems counterintuitive, but the places we have the hardest time recruiting is Augusta, Bangor, Scarborough, because there is so much competition.
So you have to pay more, obviously.
You have to pay more. We're looking at things that make their lives more convenient right now. So
better schedules and perks.
We're trying to find anything like that we can do in order to incentivize our staff to stay with us, to join us and to stay with us. And that's a stress that everyone's facing. But for us, the fact that we're beholden to the state, we cannot curtail any sort of operations, make those types of changes without the permission of the state. I would actually have to petition the Veteran Legal Affairs Committee if I wanted to do that. We have to maintain our footprint, which is our goal. We have to maintain a higher level of staffing, infrastructure, benefits than community nursing homes have to, but we're getting paid at the same rate. I keep talking about that $100 delta. The difference between what Maine Care pays us versus what it costs is $100 negative to us.
Do you have volunteers?
Absolutely. And we love our volunteers. And we encourage anyone, even if you think you're not that person that could sit there in a nursing home and hold someone's hand or something like that. There's other needs. We just had an Eagle Scout at our South Paris home that refurbished an entire gazebo for us. So we have folks that want to come in with those types of events, cookouts, you name it. But we also have volunteers that help with driving, help in our activities area, just general help that folks are willing to give. And we've got a lot of dedicated volunteers. However, our volunteers are being impacted by that same gray tsunami we keep talking about. Our volunteers are getting older and older and are able to do less and less. We try to make connections with our local communities. I know just because my son goes to Cheverus, I know that our Scarborough home has an agreement with Cheverus High School for the students to go over there to spend time and volunteer. We try to look at all types of intergenerational activities that we can do for volunteer opportunities. There's also times when we take folks out to a fishing pond and we just need an extra set of hands to be out there to help watch. If you volunteer, we're never going to ask you to provide care. We're just going to ask you to help with what you can. And then if you see something, let one of the staff members know, and the staff member will take care of it. If anyone's interested in volunteering, you can find information on our website, mainvets.org, or you can stop into one of your local Maine veterans homes, and they'd be happy to get you the information that you need to fill out and just a few of the checks that we have to do since you'll be working with the elderly population.
I love that idea as an Eagle Scout to have a project at a Maine veterans home. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And if there's any more Eagle Scouts out there or candidates that are looking for projects, get a hold of us. We're more than happy to find things for you.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a discussion with Maine Veterans Homes CEO, Brad Klawitter. So we've discussed the needs at the state level. Are there any at the federal level?
Yes, there's quite a bit of legislation that impacts state veterans homes that is ongoing at the federal level right now. And I have to say, I talk to a lot of my colleagues. We're in D.C. at the same time when we're doing Hill visits, et cetera. And Maine is very fortunate to have the federal delegation that it has. All of our members are accessible. They're knowledgeable. My first visit, when I met with Senator Collins and Senator King, I was just so impressed with how much they knew about our organization and what their commitment was. And Senator King and Senator Collins have been a huge supporter of ours when it comes to congressionally designated spending. When I talk about that capital that we haven't been able to spend, our federal delegation has came through for us in finding ways to bring federal dollars. So when you hear federal money coming back to Maine, we're one of the recipients of that, and we're very thankful for that. It's a program that, because of the budget constraints in 25, they didn't do any in 25, but we're hopeful 26s will be approved. There's some major capital needs that we have in there. Other legislation that's going right now, one thing that people don't realize when we talk about 70% service disabled veterans that come to us, they come to us under the VA care. The VA has an opinion that that prevailing rate that they pay us should cover everything, including prosthetics, electric wheelchairs, very expensive things, drugs. There's chemo pills, there's hepatitis, antifungals that out there now that can run $20,000 to $50,000 a month. And we get no additional funds for that. There's legislation that's working its way through right now, and I'm very happy to say that Representative Golden and Pingree have agreed to co-sponsor it. That would allow us to be reimbursed for those high-cost events. Right now, it's just at the medication level. So any medication that would be over 8% of what our daily rate is would then be reimbursed. The thing that makes me wonder how did this happen is if the VA was to send that same resident to a community nursing home under the VA, that community nursing home would get that reimbursement, but state veteran homes do not. So that's something important in the legislation that we have going through right now, addressing the fact that we don't even send our veterans back to the VA now for their appointments. And that's not a decision by the local TOGAS. This is a national decision, so I don't want anyone to be upset at TOGAS. They're just doing their job. But that makes a significant difference for us. And as we're looking at our funding challenges, that might be a reason for denial in the future. We don't want to do that. We have not made financial-based decisions on admissions and denials. But at some point, if you don't have a margin, you don't have a mission. And we've got to keep the mission open.
Can you expand on that? Give me an example.
We can tell pretty well what the cost of care is going to be and what our reimbursement is just based upon what the primary diagnosis of someone is when they admit to us. It's well established with CMS rates and all of that, what those costs are. The variables come in when do we have someone that just had a surgery and they're at risk for needing to have a below the knee amputation. Because if they're at risk for that, then we might have to pay for a prosthetic that's going to cost $20,000. And we might have to pay for a wheelchair that's going to cost $10,000. And we will never make that money back.
But they're not allowed to go back to TOGAS?
Correct. Or any VA facility. Again, I want to be specific. It's not TOGAS specifically, but any VA facility.
When did that rule go into place?
From what I've been told, it's always been a rule, but the VA hasn't enforced it. But they're enforcing it starting this fiscal year. And that goes for all payer sources, not just the VA, that we have never evaluated what the cost of care is going to be compared to what the reimbursement is going to be. that might have to become a reality for us soon as we continue to try to lessen that gap in reimbursement and cost. There's also legislation. I was talking about the staffing ratios earlier. That came out of Congress, and then it kind of trickled its way down to the State House. So we have legislation there where we're trying to inform folks that this is not going to add any value. This is not going to make the residents any safer. It's just going to add to the cost of care. Other things where there's some redundancies, we have to be surveyed by Center for Medicaid and Medicaid Services, CMS, as well as the VA. So there's current legislation, as I mentioned, that they're hoping to make that only one. Since they're both looking at the same exact thing, it just doesn't make sense for us to have that duplicative government oversight. So there's some legislation there that I think is important. There's several other things that is important to state veterans' homes, but for me, those are the main issues that I talk about when I'm on the Hill.
And the reception is they're supportive?
Yes. Like I said, both senators, both representatives have been strong supporters of MVH through the years. Whenever I talk to them, they just want to know what's needed. They like to get the brass tacks, as folks say. What's the issue and how can we help solve that? And I love that approach that we get from our federal delegation is how can we solve this problem is usually the number one. They don't just want to know what the problem is, but they want to hear from me. They want to hear from constituents. They want to hear from experts. How do we help solve this problem and what can I do federally to help you?
So I know when you probably came in to take the job as CEO, you must have a vision. What is your vision for the Veterans Home?
That's a great question. I would say my vision is that we are continuing to provide high quality care with high resident satisfaction in all locations for all veterans of Maine. That's my vision. It's a simple but a very difficult one to pull off. We're not looking to expand, to build new buildings, things like that. Right now, we're planning on keeping the footprint that we have. But my vision is to maintain the footprint that we have in all the communities that we're in right now. And honestly, how we're going to get there is that we're going to have to diversify our revenue. We have projects that are going on, like I said, with our pharmacy program and others in order to find different streams of revenue. We have to continue to cut expenses. I think $1.5 million, while I'm happy, that's a great start for us. I think that that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we can find. So my vision, my dream, I would say, is that I don't have to take any money from the state and I'm not dependent upon anyone other than our operational model. I don't think we'll be able to get there alone. As much as I'm trying to cut expenses and increase revenue, the math just tells us that it's going to be difficult to do that. My dream is that we never have to ask anyone for money and we're able to operate. My vision is that we need to have 6 homes and we're going to need support in order to do that, whether it's from the legislature, whether it's through donations, philanthropy. We just need whatever support we can get right now to ensure that we can continue our mission of caring for those who served.
Before we let you go, if there's a family member out there, someone out there listening to this podcast, and they want to know what is the process for them to become a patient or a resident, as you put it?
The best information we have is currently on our website. You can go to mainvets.org and look there for the different criteria, the things that we need. Because we have to verify you're a veteran, there's certain documents like a 214 that we need that normal folks wouldn't, and we'll be able to talk through that with you. The other thing you can do is go to your local home and you can talk to the admissions coordinator there, provide a scenario in terms of what level of care we're looking at. Is it an immediate need? As we look at our admissions, it's kind of like in the emergency room. The heart attack's going to be pulled in before the broken arm is. We look at what the greatest need is at that time for what we have, and then we bring those folks in. But yes, absolutely. Even if you don't need the services right now, go to our website and start gathering the paperwork, because when you need it, it's hard to get that paperwork together. And you're probably not the one that's going to be putting it together. It's going to be a loved one. So make sure you have a clean copy of your 214. If you don't, we can help you with that. Also, the Maine Department of Veteran Affairs and Services can help you with that. So,
as well as congressional offices. They actually are a great resource to help veterans obtain their medals and everything else.
Absolutely.
Do you have wait lists?
Some of our facilities do have wait lists. Generally, as you get into the larger Scarborough, Bangor, Augusta, those facilities tend to have a longer wait list. But one of the things that we're working on right now is if we do have capacity at another home, do we have the opportunity that maybe this person wants to go to the Augusta home, but we don't have capacity right now, but South Paris might. So South Paris is only an hour away, which in Maine is right next door, I've learned. And then if and when the bed becomes available in Augusta, we can make that transfer. Again, I would encourage anyone that's interested in learning more about either A, the organization in whole, or about admission, go to mainvets.org. And if anyone would like to donate to us, again, it's a 501(c) tax deductible donation. And you can go to mainvets.org/donate.
Maine Veterans Homes CEO Brad Klawitter, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. We really do appreciate it.
I really appreciate you having me on and your interest in Maine Veterans Homes and Maine veterans in general. So thank you for the time today.
Yes, thank you very much. And once again, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.